think we're good to go, Deb.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Amy. Well, welcome, everyone. I see a few of your faces. Welcome to our May Tech Industry Luncheon webinar. I'm Deborah Sawyer, Managing Director of ZRG Partners. We're an executive search firm. I also serve as a member of both the Tech Titans Board and the Tech Titans Executive Committee, and I'm a tri-chair of the programs team that produces these events. Our presenting sponsor for this year's Tech Industry Luncheon Series 2020 is UT Design at the University of Texas at Dallas. For a few words of welcome and to tell us what's going on over at UT Design, here is the Assistant Dean of the Johnson School of Engineering and Computer Science, Dr. Rod Wetterskog. You're muted.
I just had amazing words of wisdom. Can everyone hear me now? Deborah, can you?
Yes, you're good.
Right. Well, good morning, everyone. And we're so excited to have you with us today. You're a dear friend to UD Dallas, and we look forward to your comments and updates. On behalf of everyone, on behalf of UT Design, we do welcome everyone today. And we've got a special invitation for you for a way that you can easily and effectively engage with our computer science and engineering students that are about to graduate. We call it UT Design Senior Capstone, and quite frankly, we need you. We've got 32 engineering teams starting in a couple of weeks, and a record number of 65 computer science teams and 57 engineering teams starting in the fall. That's over 500 students that are eager to work on solving your problems, and we need you to sponsor a team. And hopefully, as you see by this video, many of you will see that you have a need for our students as well. So let's see if I can pull this up and share it with you for a second. Let's see. Does everybody see it?
No.
No. Oh, no. All right. Well, let me just say, oh, here it is. Ha, okay. Let her rip.
Chances are you resources and time there's just not enough to go around. What if there was a way to tackle this problem without overspending and sacrificing productivity, and while still getting the results you want? Meet UT Design Capstone. UT Design Capstone started recruiting students from all types of engineering, computer science disciplines, coding and development project projects, helping you stay top of the resources. Here's how it works. Get on the house. So what are you working with? Let us know creative solutions for this project and let's make a
Thank you. No dogs or children were in that video, trust me. Amy, again, Ann, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for being our sponsor. And is there an update on your ventilator project?
Yeah, actually, we were on Channel 5 NBC last night, and the Dallas Morning News picked us up. We are waiting for FDA approval, and then we've got students from UT Southwestern Medical Center right now, and our own UTD engineers building PEEP valves as we speak. So we're going to have about 150 ready for UT question if the supply chain does not open up next week.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, Tech Titans has been committed to delivering quality content in its programs using this virtual platform. And that commitment continues with several upcoming programs I encourage you to consider attending. Check the schedule on the Tech Titans website, www.techtitans.org. And now would be a great time for you to think about joining Tech Titans or renewing your membership. We're offering a 5% discount for new members, a convenient payment plan, and a 10% discount for renewing members. You may contact sales representative Barbara Tunstall via email at barbara@techtitans.org or by calling her at 214-455-9767. Again, 214-455-9767. The programs team is interested in your feedback from this program. So take a short survey that will pop up following the conclusion of today's program. And one more quick housekeeping announcement before we introduce Ann. Following her presentation, you will be able to ask questions using the chat room feature at the bottom of your screen. Raise your hand, address your question to me only in the chat room, and type in your question. I will moderate and ask your question to Ann. So now on to our keynote presentation. If I could please ask that everybody mute themselves or have Mallory mute them. Tech Titans is honored to have Ann Chow of AT&T with us today. The program's team is also very pleased to have with us a special guest to introduce Ann. Please welcome the Vice President of AT&T Broadband and Video Systems and the 2020 Chair of Tech Titans, Amy Wheelis. Amy?
Thank you, Deb. It is my pleasure to be here. And as y'all know, we are all in this together, learning new things as we go along. So we're appreciating you being a part of our virtual series as we get going. It's a special pleasure for me to introduce Ann today because Ann and I have known each other since we were both college hires at AT&T. We hired in at the same time into our college hire program. And our paths have crossed over the course of several decades. And we are, it's a pleasure to be both here in Dallas together and working together. Ann was appointed Chief Executive Officer of AT&T Business in September of 2019. She and her organization of over 30,000 employees are responsible for serving nearly 3 million business customers in upwards of 200 countries and territories around the world. AT&T Business customers span all industries, including the public sector, as well as nearly all of the world's Fortune 1000 companies. Ann is the first woman to hold this position and the first woman of color CEO in AT&T's history. Ann has led many global organizations through major transformations, developing and executing innovative growth strategies while building role model relationships. She is passionate about education, diversity, and inclusion, and advancing women in technology, and cultivating the next generation of leaders. Please welcome Ann Chow.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy. And thanks, Deb, for the lovely intro, and Rod as well. It is great to see you guys here. Appreciate all that UTD is doing for our North Texas community. And I'm just really thankful to have the Tech Titans ask to spend some time together, and it is really my pleasure to be here with all of you. So, Amy, thanks for that lovely intro. I noticed you said a couple of decades. You didn't actually admit that it will be 3 decades since we started in the communications industry together. Just seems like just yesterday. One of the things I think that has been a true constant in our tenure here at AT&T and has been a constant across the North Texas community is a commitment to and a passion for technology. And, I would be remiss if I didn't first say that I hope that all of you are safe and well and healthy, and that through this crisis, you and your families, your teams, your organizations, your businesses, your communities have stayed strong. There's no question that we are in a different world. And I think that this, this keynote, if you will, which feels more like a discussion, which I actually really like that, as opposed to me being on a stage and all of you around, luncheon tables with you. And by the way, if you're eating your lunch, that's totally fine. That's what this is intended to be. I feel that the title of A New Era is incredibly appropriate. So let's just get right into it, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. If you could go to the next slide, please. So one of the biggest questions that I have gotten throughout this COVID crisis is, and how is AT&T's network performing? What are you seeing as you support customers of all different shapes and sizes as we have gone into this crisis? And there's no question that COVID-19 has left its mark on history. In fact, we have yet to see and experience the full ramifications of it. We know that the economy is experiencing its deepest decline since the Great Depression, and many industries and jobs, even many that we participate in very, very actively, are incredibly paralyzed as we figure out how to restart and reset. But it is in our human nature that ours is to adapt and evolve, right? And COVID has really given us this incredible opportunity to do so, and technology and the network has played an incredible part in that. What I'm sharing with you here is some of the consumption patterns that we have seen over the period of time with respect to COVID. And as you would expect, core network traffic is up. I love to say that voice is the new killer app, right? What's old again is new. And whether it's in collaboration services like the one that we're all participating on here, or the traffic on our wireless network, that's voice, consumers calling using voice services, you can see a significant increase in utilization. I think in aggregate, because I am speaking to a group of tech titans, our daily average in terms of what we see on our network is 335 petabytes, right? So that's 10 to the 15th power. But what we have seen here in COVID is that our network is carrying now more than 400 petabytes of data. So there's no question that what COVID has done is really catapulted us into an appreciation for dependence on technology in ways that we've never seen. Next page, please. So now let me talk a little bit more about some of the things that we have seen through COVID, because I think that, regardless of where we came from and how we entered COVID, again, regardless of industry perspective or role, we'd all be hard-pressed to say, look, this is a massive reset, right? This is a massive reset on what we will see, what we anticipate, and what the future of technology and the future of transformation may bring. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that we've seen, and thankfully to the power of software-defined networks, to broadband services, wireless, FirstNet, which is something that I'll talk about in a little bit. We have been able to serve and support companies, our economy, in a way that I don't think anybody really anticipated. If you take a step back and you think about this, and I actually put this on one of my social platforms a couple of weeks ago, but if you could envision what life would be like right now if we were not connected, right? You think about how technology now has, and the power of connection has been so amplified, because could you imagine this crisis, this global pandemic, taking place even just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or heaven forbid, when Amy and I started at AT&T back in 1990, right? If you can imagine what would happen, how we would have been connected, how we would have been able to have an understanding of the most critical of issues, how we would have been able to secure healthcare, how would we have been able to teach our children, right, in such a crisis? And there's no question that this move to remote everything, right? This move to an immense amount of mobile-enabled connections. We have seen companies deploy thousands of mobile devices, educators and school districts all around the country, all the way up through higher ed, have to completely pivot their curriculum and their mode of operation to distance learning. If you can imagine this, what we've even experienced in terms of our own health care, right, as we've had to take care of our own well-being and that of our families, and do so in a remote way, it's really hard to imagine what life would be like without the power of technology. And that just gives a little taste of what transformation is going to be like, very much triggered by and catalyzed by what COVID has shown us. And in fact, we are now, I would say, at a critical inflection point as it relates to businesses and consumers alike, as we look across the country and as states slowly but surely lift their shelter-in-place orders. You can see really all of society trying to figure out, okay, what's this mean now? What's this return to make work mean now? What does return to my life mean, and how will I be enabled fundamentally differently because of what the global pandemic means? So next page, please. Let's talk a little bit about, so what's next for technology? Now, I will admit that I've actually been saying this for a while, and that is as a fellow, techno nerd, or whatever we are calling ourselves these days, and there's no question that digital transformation is here to stay. In fact, I have a saying which is really that digital transformation is really a misnomer because it's fundamentally business transformation, right? Every business, no matter how big or how small, has to transform. And there's no question that digital capabilities, digital everything, technology is going to play a critical role, whether that's in entertainment or sports. Some of us were just talking about the NFL draft in the run-up to this and how different that felt, and healthcare and more. And so how do we return to the physical world together while increasing our dependency, if you will, our reliance on digital innovations? So the need for software-based technologies like software-defined networks, SD-WAN technologies, that's only going to increase. The pandemic has made it really, really clear that for all businesses of all kinds, heck, for even consumers, right, the cloud is critical, right? When we think about all the critical data in our lives, in our businesses, it's resident in the cloud, whether that's in a public cloud or a private cloud or in a hybrid environment. And there's no question that next generation networking across fixed and mobile technologies is going to be critical for all enterprises to be successful. We believe at AT&T that more is going to be possible because of 5G, and much like 4G introduced the world to the gig economy, we are absolutely certain that 5G is going to jumpstart the next wave of unforeseen innovations, and I'm going to dig into that in a little bit. Just as an example, telehealth visits, right? So in March, telehealth visits were up by 50%. That completely makes sense when you think about it, right? But imagine that telehealth infrastructure environment being enabled by technology, because absolutely it was. Grocery stores and restaurants, I hope all of you are supporting your local small businesses with an immense amount of takeout and delivery services, right? They pivoted their businesses to online. Boot camps, gyms, yoga classes, kickboxing, all this is being done now virtually in this new environment. And so what we've seen from a consumer perspective is consumers, and I'm sure all of us can relate to this, have craved really simple but enhanced experiences. And what COVID has done is really just accelerate this trend to a better and different way of doing things. And there's no question that 5G is going to play a key role. If you go to the next page, please. So the 5G transformation. So what is 5G and what does it do for us that 5G didn't? Really, there's three key characteristics that trigger what we call the next industrial revolution. The first, and probably the easiest, most important to understand for the layperson, is that 5G is going to be ultra fast. Okay. Now, how fast is that? Faster than the Roadrunner, no doubt. But my lawyers would tell you that it depends on a number of factors. I can share that AT&T was the first carrier to hit speeds of 2 gigabits per second on a trial that we did with 5G Plus, which is our millimeter wave spectrum offering. That's 100 times faster than your average 4G LTE speeds. The second characteristic of 5G is its ultra responsiveness. And so for you technophiles out there, what we mean by this is ultra low latency. Latency, of course, is the response time across the network. And so let me take you to that telehealth use case. So if you're a physician, whether you're in an emergency room or whether you're in another part of the hospital or building, or whether you're even at home, right? Imagine that every millisecond of response time on seeing an x-ray, getting test files, counts in terms of your ability to diagnose and react and take action to save patients' lives. All right. The third characteristic of 5G that will help trigger this, this explosion of innovation is mass connectivity. So Wi-Fi allows about 250 connections per access point. 4G LTE takes this to a whole new level, to the number of tens of thousands. But if you have ever tried to utilize your phone, if you're in a stadium or at a rock concert, because everybody's got their phones up, recording, or you're trying to send text, you're trying to post on your social, you'll know that that even tens of thousands has its limits, right? 5G holds the promise that millions of things could be connected to one access point or antenna. And this offers all kinds of possibilities and breakthrough technologies when we think about self-driving cars, right? Think about the importance of speed, latency, and mass connectivity, right? That's, you can't have hardly any margin of error there if we think about autonomous cars. Imagine smart factories, and one of the things that COVID has triggered here is this huge pivot in the manufacturing sector to dark factories, right, where you have very few humans in physical footprint, right? So that's going to be a big use case area that we see. And then also revolutionary breakthroughs in healthcare. Next page. All right, so now let's talk about the 5G landscape. AT&T is currently deploying two different variants, two different types of 5G in our evolution. At AT&T, the service we call 5G runs on sub-6 spectrum. This is the same spectrum band that your smartphone runs on today. Those radio waves, they do a great job at carrying your calls and data sessions over a wide geographic area, right, and through the walls of buildings, all right? But there's also another flavor of 5G, and that's called millimeter wave 5G+. It is ultra fast, and that we're finding that we can bring 5G+ services to unique businesses, manufacturing plants, hospitals, and stadiums, right, where the wide range propagation is not the primary criteria, but it's more in an isolated environment. These two variants of 5G are already having significant impact on how we're serving businesses and how our business clients are engaging with their customers. I'd like to give you a couple of examples of that. Let's go to the next page, please. So since last January, which seems, I have to say, like lifetimes ago, but we've announced more than a dozen enterprise customers with whom we are co-innovating and co-creating around 5G, around Internet of Things, IoT, as well as edge computing. We are working with all of these customers to create next generation solutions that help transform their businesses and their industries. Whether it's hospitals or news outlets or university campuses, we're developing and testing 5G use cases with them and with our business customers to help them innovate, solve problems, anticipate the problems of the future, and really differentiate the experiences that they can provide to their customers and to their constituents. This will become even more key in a post-COVID environment. Let me first talk about, next page please, let me first talk about healthcare. And I read a quote recently that said that this is healthcare's Amazon moment, right? And so if we think about the web scale nature of what healthcare is not yet currently, this really underlines the opportunity that has really been catapulted by COVID, right? So transformation in healthcare is being accelerated, right? Over time, I think we would all say, yes, we sure know that telehealth and telemedicine, remote medicine is part of our future. I don't think any of us would have anticipated what COVID has accelerated in terms of how we think about a low physical touch environment in terms of healthcare. So let me give you a couple of aspects of this that we're working on with various clients to bring to life the power of what transformation and the new future will bring to healthcare. So if you can envision, IoT devices that are home, that are at your home, managing your vital signs, sending them to your healthcare provider. That's both for preventative medicine as well as restorative medicine. Think about doctors sharing CT scans or MRIs, specialists who are located all around the world, all around the country, who can consult with each other and pass data back and forth to ensure that their diagnoses are more accurate. They can get second, third, and fourth opinions accordingly. These massive files, as we know today, take an incredible amount of time to download with the existing technologies. And I'm sure some of us have heard about horror stories where doctors are waiting overnight and to the evenings to transfer files and share information when traffic is much lighter. With 5G, all this type of data could be transferred and downloaded in less than a minute. One of the exciting use cases we've provided is during COVID-19, we worked with VitalTech, which is a cloud-based telehealth services company, to provide them 60 free days of free telehealth services to business customers like hospitals to support their physicians and their patients. So while this example today was done over our 4G LTE network, you can envision how that might evolve in a 5G scenario, with even more innovations. So telehealth isn't something that's just going to be utilized to provide relief to overwhelmed hospitals and a healthcare system during a pandemic. We believe that telehealth is a new frontier. Patients, all of us alike, whether it's ourselves or loved ones, we've had a taste of what telehealth could mean and telehealth medicine means in our new environment. And the transformation is happening, no question, going forward. I want to also share a use case that demonstrates what transformation could actually look like in the near future in kind of the physical world. So in a medical environment, the video that I'm about to play you, hopefully knock on wood that it rolls and it works, is for the University of Southern California, Ellison Institute of Transformative Medicine. This is a customer that we've been innovating with. We have been on the path with them using our 5G and our edge compute, as well as AI and some other emerging technologies to power their state-of-the-art smart facility for cancer research, treatment, and wellness education. So let's take a look real quick on how they envision 5G and these solutions helping them with their patient environment and experiences. Let's roll the video, please.
My dream is to have a place where patients and scientists can interact. We can have different disciplines, physicists, mathematicians, engineers, all together to think about the problems we have in cancer.
The Ellison Institute for Transformative Medicine is a brand new state-of-the-art facility in LA, and the intent of it is to really figure out new ways of identifying and then treating cancer in patients.
The goal of the design is to help everyone interact together and to create an interdependency between patient and researcher and physician and everybody that contributes to this healing process. We hope to make all their paths intersect and cross. Collaboration and transparency is really essential to believing in something and hoping that you can be healed.
AT&T Business is going to serve as one of the primary technology providers for the Ellison Institute. And we're bringing together some of the latest technologies like 5G and edge compute, along with things like wayfinding and interaction of data between patients and medical researchers to really help them figure out better ways of treating cancer. The doctors there are going to be generating a truly massive amount of data, and they want to be able to capture that via 5G and edge, move it to the right place so that they can analyze it, get insights off of it.
What it gives you are these little windows into everything that's going on around the building. It's symbolic to me of that constant connection with our outside community.
When you think about healthcare, it starts with the patient. And all of us at one point or another in our lives have been patients, and we want better outcomes faster. Technology can help in that.
Great, thanks. I'm glad you guys could hear the audio on that. So before I move on to education, let me just say that what I hope that video gave you was a sense of not only the power of technology, but the importance of also design thinking and the, as we think about, analytics and some of the merging of not just science and technology, as we are all passionate about, but the importance of user interface and user experience, right? And so what I think is so powerful about this future is that innovation will happen on so many different aspects of what we'll be able to provide consumers and businesses alike, no matter what the future is. And so that's kind of why we call 5G the trigger of the next industrial revolution. Okay, now let me move to a topic that I know is close to Rod's heart, but as well as everybody else's here, because there is no technophile who isn't passionate about education. So, educators are certainly planning for, we think about COVID and the return to the new future, if you will, the creation of the new future. Educators are really looking at and planning for a multitude of scenarios when they're talking about returning to the classroom. There's no question that technology will play a critical role in that, regardless of what scenario is utilized. So the options that educators are looking at, they range from, returning to school in a continued remote environment, to a hybrid learning model where you have some combination of in-person and online environments, or a full-on in-person return to campus. While the start dates and the answers to the questions of, so when can my kid go back to school, is largely unknown, the common denominator here is connectivity, right? And the role that connectivity plays in that decision process. This year, we actually announced and launched a collaboration. I actually just posted this on LinkedIn, on Twitter. But we launched a collaboration with the University of Missouri for a 5G course. They had a lot to say about how, the students had a lot to say about how they envision the future of schools. So the students there participated in an immersive spring semester course where they studied and they brainstormed, researched, collaborated, then presented their ideas virtually, of course, for creating new innovations around 5G. They looked at applications for campus safety, student healthcare, campus healthcare, education, as well as athletics. And the education team's findings are pretty interesting and incredibly timely. 68% of students actually preferred a combined classroom in online setting, right? And so, any assumptions that maybe some of us oldies, and I say that in the most fondest way, Amy, for you and me, right, that might prefer an entirely physical campus experience, it just shows the demonstration of the generational shift to, hey, no, in actuality, students prefer a hybrid, a hybrid approach in terms of return to work and return to school for them. And I think that is for sure worth pursuing, and we're working with many institutions around that. Prior to COVID-19, we were actually working with a couple of other universities around the country on 5G deployments very specifically, Purdue and University of Miami. Our deployment plans with them have not slowed down. At the University of Miami, they were one of the first universities in the nation to explore 5G and edge computing, and they did so to enhance digital learning and advance R&D opportunities. So, in their vision, students will be able to physically interact with DNA models, peer in, and maybe see iconic works of art from every angle using AR and VR technologies, and so much more, right? And so if we can envision kind of the marrying of where the University of Miami was going to what the University of Missouri students were telling us, right, that they prefer both a combination of physical and online capabilities, right, the future really looks quite exciting, very bright, and very different than I suspect when we all were in school. So let's go to the next page. So there's no question that access to data, access to media, and knowledge, news is critical in times like this, right? And while all of us are getting barraged from multiple different sources, there's no question that we need to have that information at our fingertips. If you can imagine, what it was like as we were all going through in our local communities, different stay-at-home orders, different guidelines, right? The ability to get your message out to your community and constituents was absolutely paramount. Before COVID-19, we were working with the Washington Post on the future of news gathering, news production, as well as digital storytelling. The goal in working with them was to really make the newsroom operations work faster and more reliably, but also explore what the future of digital storytelling could be. And I think that we have seen throughout COVID some amazing storytelling that has really compelled us to unite as a community. This ranges from using high quality visuals. You can envision in a 5G world more immersive news experiences through augmented or virtual reality. What if we could put ourselves on the front lines of breaking news stories through 5G devices? Would it help people better understand and appreciate the impact of the virus so that they could stay safe and do their part? It's a possibility, isn't it, if you can think about that? So while we're still hard at work on that use case, we have been engaged in supporting the remote needs of reporters and audio engineers at home. We've all seen the pivot of news reporters. I think in some ways it's actually helped humanize them as it has helped humanize all of us as we have pivoted to this new environment. And I think that we would all say that, after maybe a couple of weeks of this format seeming a little bit weird, right? No doubt we would all say, hey, this feels actually quite natural now, right? And in some ways, it helps the technology and what this has enabled has helped demystify and humanize whether it's news personalities, reporters, even each other in a business context. The 5G future that we see is certainly brighter, because it's all about better experiences, a better understanding, and news and media play a critical role in that. Okay. Now let me move on to perhaps a little bit of a lighter use case, if you will, and that is sports, right? We here in America, we here in Texas, we love our sports, right? This is big from a consumer entertainment perspective. So some of us may be imagining, right, how do we entice people back, right? How do we ensure that that the environments, the arenas, the stadiums, how do we ensure that they're safe? How do we ever congregate in a physical location ever again in the way that that we once did? So what we're doing now is we're actually exploring with arenas, but also with retailers and other providers of services where you need to have a congregation of people physically there, on the use of technology to screen and monitor the health of visitors as we turn to the physical world, here in the physical world of sports, right? We're looking at a combination of 5G, video, data analytics, and artificial intelligence, as well as thermal imaging to track things like the temperature changes, in an environment, which if you can envision, that will not only enable you to gauge perhaps the health as measured by a fever or not of an individual, but it could also help you track the number of people that are in your facility as well as where they are, okay? And so that near real-time situational awareness will become critical, not just in a sports environment, but really, again, in any environment, whether it's a restaurant or retailer or otherwise. And so prior to COVID-19, we began working with the Dallas Cowboys to launch the first 5G-enabled sports stadium. I won't, normally if we were in a room together in the conference setting, I'd ask for a raise of hands for how many of you have actually been to AT&T Stadium and seen the 5G and experienced the 5G services. I can share with you, they've been a great client of ours for many, many years. And 5G is a game changer for them. Let me give you a couple of examples. The first one is perhaps my favorite one, and it is the installation is still there, and it plays a critical role in the Cowboys' transformation of their fan experience, and it's called the Pose with Pros. And this is an interactive column. There are several of them that's connected to our 5G network there at the stadium, and it allows fans to digitally pose with their favorite players. You can walk up, you can pick 5 players, and they huddle around you. And you could see, you can see my Pose with Pros right there, and you've got an amazingly realistic picture. Right, it's actually hard to get, hard to gauge who's real and who's not, right, in that photo. But what the Cowboys have found is that this is an incredible way to bring fans to the stadium as opposed to watch from home. Another example that we work with them on is the Hall of Heroes, and it gives fans an opportunity to practice their touchdown next to Amari Cooper and other Cowboys players in a high-quality 3D volumetric video. So you choose the player from a lineup, and you stand in front of the camera, and this camera captures you, and then of course you can go post that on your social media. The future, no doubt, looks very, very bright, enabled by 5G, and in sports and entertainment, the possibilities are really endless. Let me now move to what I think is perhaps the most compelling and certainly the most important use case for technology transformation and what we've learned through COVID-19 and the pandemic. It has been an unprecedented time for our first responders. We all know over these 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks, depending on where you live, what our first responders and those on the front line have been up against, right? FirstNet, let me just say that AT&T has been fortunate to be enabling our first responders with our FirstNet services, and let me just take a moment to talk about what FirstNet is. AT&T builds and manages FirstNet, which is the only nationwide wireless communication platform that's dedicated to and purpose-built for America's first responders and the public safety community. FirstNet was actually born out of the 9/11 Commission and is done in a public-private partnership that we've got with the federal government. And FirstNet played a critical role and has played a critical role over its last couple of years of existence, but played a super critical role that we saw through COVID. And that is, FirstNet, it's a government-mandated, dedicated, mission-critical set of services and custom applications that are built for first responders, whether they're law enforcement, whether they're fire, military, healthcare workers who became, responders on the first line, and other key essential workers. What we did, in FirstNet is provide priority and preemption. One of the things that, one of the questions that I get often is, well, Ann, how do you ensure that the service, the communications capabilities of these first responders take priority? That's what FirstNet, those are a couple of the key characteristics of our FirstNet services. They provide priority services and preemption services so that our first responders, no matter the environment, even in the most rural of environments, have their services. Another key factor, another key learning which came out of 9/11 was the struggles that each of the different agencies had in communicating with each other. FirstNet also provides agency interoperability. So as you think about how we as a country have responded to COVID, right, the interactions between FEMA, the Navy, law enforcement, local governments, local fire, local healthcare workers, right? The ability to interoperate with a seamless communications capability has also been very, very key as relates to providing these mobile technologies. So if you can envision a future where these types of services are even more prolific and provided to our first responders across the community, you can envision where we could collect information from the scene of emergency to help make key decisions for the type of response needed, right? And every second, as we know, with illness, with life matters. We could see new connected device use cases in terms of connected gear, wearable cameras, so that we could see what the first responders see in near real time, so that they could get the support of what they need. So cameras and wearable sensors are absolutely part of the future. One thing that I would like to share as well as a future use case that I think is incredibly powerful is that the leading death on the job of firefighters is cardiac arrest, right? So if you can envision an environment where we're able to monitor in real time the health data of our first responders, of the fire people, of the firefighters, and we could monitor that, which would help trigger early warning alerts to keep them safe and keep them alive, right? We could monitor things like heart rates, and that could trigger, again, information and thus action. But what I hope you get a sense of here is that we are just scratching the surface of what's possible. Next page. So as I wrap here with kind of the formal part of the keynote, what I'd like to share is that there's no question that the pandemic has given us an opportunity, what I would say is for a reset, right? For a pause. It's provided us with a wealth of information, deep learnings about how we live, how we work, what is most important to us. it has shown us a realm of possibilities, but it's also exposed weaknesses, right? And it's also exposed silos. We have an obligation to humanity. We have an obligation to this one planet that we live on, the home that we all share. We are very purposeful about bridging how we collaborate and make changes in this next phase of COVID, the return and recovery phase, so that we can ultimately get to the renewal and revitalization phase. The world, we believe here at AT&T, can no doubt be enhanced through technology. It is truly a new era, so all of our old paradigms of what the future was going to look like, some will continue and get enhanced and get accelerated. Others will just need to fall by the wayside. I'm very personally look forward to what happens next, and I'm thankful to have the role that I have in the company that I work for and this incredible market here living in North Texas. I hope that all of us together as our own tech titans, if you will, are getting ready for what we know will be an incredibly dynamic future. We've all got to increase our flexibility, our agility, our level of innovation, and our vigilance, right? We know that the more technology that's out there, the more bad actors there are, right? Security remains paramount to everything that we do, and I know everything that all of us care about. The potential is limitless, but I think that is the nature of technology, and that is the nature of innovation. And so I look forward to working with all of you, directly or indirectly, as we move past this phase of survival into creating a new era where all of us as institutions, as businesses, as educators, as humans, as consumers can thrive. And so on that note, I think I'm kicking it back to Deb. Am I kicking it back to you or Amy for the Q&A, the open part of the session? Yeah.
Kick it back. Yes. Thank you, Ann, very much. That was fantastic, and we're glad to have you here and at the helm of AT&T Business. Just a quick mention of FirstNet. FirstNet was the winner of the Tech Titans Corporate Innovation Award in 2018. So we recognize the innovation there and happy to see it out here on the forefront. We do have questions now, so I'll jump to those. Again, please direct your questions to me. I'm listed on there as D. Sawyer, but I'll go ahead and get a couple of the other ones here. The first question is from Bill Spurl, and it is, how will 5G affect our humanity towards one another?
Yeah, so I think this is purely Ann's point of view in terms of affect our humanity towards one another. It's one of the things that I think we've learned, and I'll correlate this back to what we're all experiencing through COVID, right, in our shelter-in-place environment, which is, I wish they didn't call social distancing, but they called it physical distancing, right? Because we are, look, as humans, we're social creatures, right? We thrive on the power of our connections with each other. We thrive on the power of our connections with our community, with our loved ones, with our businesses, with our passions, right? And so what 5G will do in these use cases and across industries, whether it's healthcare, or education, or sports and entertainment, or media, is 5G will enable us to have a future that's incredibly more immersive, that is much more experiential, that is many ways even more personal, if you will, right? And so we really do believe that it is going to be the trigger for the next industrial revolution, because once 5G is fully deployed, the possibility is really, really endless. And so I believe that 5G will help connect us even more so with experiences, with the improvement of processes, right? I mean, just talk about the healthcare one, right? Even just the discussion that we just had on firefighters and health monitoring for them, right? 5G will no doubt help us enrich our lives. And I want to take a moment because I want to give you a sense of the power of this. One of the companies that we have been working with is a hospice healthcare services company, and when we embarked on a 5G trial with them, neither of us, and this is the beauty of co-creation and co-innovation, neither of us really quite knew what was going to be that use case that would make all the difference in the world, okay? So if you can think of a, unfortunately all of us, we don't live forever, if you will, right? And so if you can think of, the environment today, where one of the really saddest, most tragic things that we're seeing happening in COVID is that patients who are on their deathbed or who are severely ill, who need the power of their loved ones near them, right, are unable to say goodbye. They are unable to feel that love physically because of the restrictions that hospitals and facilities have to put in place. This isn't a pre-COVID use case, but with this provider, through the power of 5G, what they were able to do for patients who were, in hospice, in their last weeks or days of life, if you can imagine, I wish, right? What do we hear the story? I wish I had a chance to, climb the Great Wall, go to the Great Wall. I wish that I would have had a chance to go see Big Ben. With the power of 5G, that's possible, right? And that is an amazing use case, right? That brings our humanity together. Another one that I would share, I'm going to be moved to tears here, but another one is in pain therapy, okay? So in the first trial with this company that we had using augmented reality, virtual reality technologies, there was a patient who was suffering from an illness that she could not be touched, right? Her pain threshold was so high that nurses could not care for her to the degree that they needed to. She measured her pain in over 10, okay? She was provided with a 5G-enabled augmented reality, virtual reality experience, all right, through devices. And, one was kind of a meditative experience. Another one was, kind of another soothing one. And afterwards, she said her pain threshold was a 2, okay? And then nurses could actually care for her, and she could actually sleep for a couple hours, okay? So these are just just two early use cases, right? You can sense my excitement because I think the future is going to be amazing. So.
Well, thank you. Here's we've gone from the humanity side of it to a very engineering-oriented question.
Well, by the way, I'm going to put a caveat on this one because I might have to punt to my tech titan Amy here because while I do have a degree in electrical engineering, it was a really super long time ago, right? And I haven't been in network for a while. So let's hear it. And I can already feel, Amy, that I'm going to punt it to you. So
Solomon Israel would like to know what you're regarding network slicing as it relates to enterprise solutions. Do you see this as big as the speed and latency enhancements?
Yeah, Amy, I'd love your thoughts on this one. I have not, go ahead. I'd love your thoughts.
I think that it's a really good addition to what we've already talked about as the benefits of 5G. And network slicing allows us to segment off bits of spectrum and create basically virtual private networks within the wireless spectrum. And it allows us in the enterprise space to have specific bandwidth that is dedicated for specific purposes, which we have not been able to do in a wireless or a cellular manner before. And so the use cases that it will allow in manufacturing, in enterprise businesses are really great and really great opportunities to be able to segment that bits of traffic that you don't want just broadcast over the wire waves to anyone, to really be able to be segmented and in your own private networks.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, Bill Spurl has another question. And we talked about how 5G is, being shown effective in healthcare and universities. He's wondering how, let's see here, let me find the question. Okay, he's wondering which sectors will be the quickest to adopt 5G and which will be the slowest.
Yeah, so I would have answered you differently, I think, pre-COVID versus post-COVID on a couple of fronts, right? And I just gave you guys a couple of examples, right? We pre-COVID, we saw incredible opportunity in stadiums, venues, and theaters, right? Because if you can think about it, yeah, you know, I'll give you another example. Working with a movie theater, right? You know, when you think about a movie environment, the big box office is made in the early days of premiere, right? How do you entice people to not wait till it comes out on streaming, right? But you entice them to the theater, and you could envision all different kinds of really immersive use cases, you know, during an opening of a big blockbuster film, right, that you could provide in your theater to bring people there to see your movie, okay? Similar to the kind of the Dallas Cowboys AT&T Stadium use cases, right? So I would have said entertainment would have been a huge, huge early area for immense innovation, right? I think now, right, with COVID, right, and you know, any industry where you know, lots of different people have to congregate, there's a little bit of a pause in 5G innovation as to how we were thinking about it in that kind of way, right? You know, I'll give you another use case that we were working that's retail that I think takes a little bit of a backseat to, I'll talk about future use case. So in retail, as an example, we were working with some you know, retailers on, we call it the magic mirror, right? So in a 5G environment, you could have a piece of clothing, stand in front of the mirror and see all different, you know, the clothing would change. You could see the different colors of the clothing without ever having to actually go look at them, right? So, you know, you could actually try on outfits without actually taking your clothes off, right? So again, in retail, right, if I think about the shift in retail to innovation, there's now a much heavier focus on being able to keep track of people within an environment, right? So in terms of industries that I think will be early adopters, you know, I think some will pivot their use cases, like the retail example. I think healthcare is a no-brainer. That is one that you know, that we see as a significant one in the pre-COVID, that we see as a significant one post-COVID. I think education as well is another one pre-COVID that also kind of ports forward post-COVID. I think there's big opportunity. You know, manufacturing, right? We think about dark manufacturing, right? And so manufacturing where you know, there's heavy degrees of automation and robotics, and even now post-COVID, this desire to take as many people out of the system as possible, right? As we continue to manage the spread of the virus, right, and the impact of the virus. You know, another example of perhaps industries that will perhaps a little bit lag, right? You know, we're all talking about the travel industry, right? Hospitality or otherwise, right? You know, I think you know, their industries have been drastically fundamentally changed, right? And so I think they will, by definition, because of the nature of the priorities post-COVID, shift, right? But what I think is really opportunistic is you know, the opportunity to work with businesses of all different kinds to ensure that innovation, whether it's 5G powered or not, is an important part of recovery renewal, right? Of what is their unique value proposition in a post-COVID environment, and what unique attributes of those industries you know, can leverage this kind of technology and these kinds of capabilities.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions about telehealth, and I'm going to sum up this one particular question. We've talked about how COVID really pushed healthcare technology. So what lessons, so this is from Ash Julka, what lessons can we learn from this pivot in healthcare to improve tech adoption in other industries?
What lessons can we learn? You know, I think it actually, you know, I don't know that I would answer this even just only specifically for healthcare, because I think it's a phenomena that occurred across business. That is the centralized to distributed phenomena, if you will, right? Where whether it was in healthcare or whether it was in education or whether it was in businesses, right? We have tended to, right, up until this point, up until the pre-pandemic, been operating in a very centralized fashion, right? But whether it's with the advent of 5G or not, right? What COVID and the pandemic did was demonstrate to us the power and the necessity to operate in a highly distributed, highly mobile environment, okay? And so I think this is just a sign of things to come in almost every context, right? And if I ask each of you to think about your own consumer behavior, right? Whether it's your own consumer behavior around your banking, right? Whether it's your own consumer behavior around your media consumption, right? Whether it's your own consumer behavior around retail consumption, there's no question that we are evolving to a place where all of us want what we want, when we want it, how we want it, no matter what, right? And that is all enabled by this notion of going from a much more centralized environment to one that's highly distributed, highly mobile, and highly secure, right? And highly secure. And that is an expectation that is absolutely critical in healthcare, right? If we think about all the different regulations and whatnot around patient information and patient data. But when we also think about the highly distributed nature of expertise, right, is we're no longer held to physical boundaries, right? And I think that what the learnings in healthcare showed us was, convention centers became pop-up clinics, right? We saw, the private sector and the public sector all come together, right? Because we all have a common enemy, and that's the virus, right? And so I think the learnings are even more profound than beyond healthcare. We just happen to see it manifest itself most in healthcare because of the nature of this particular crisis, right? It's a health crisis, right? And so I think that's something that we can all really think about is, how does the nature of work change? How does the nature of these industries change? How does the nature of the talents that we seek, right, going back to education, the talent that we're developing, right, and the skills that we're training for, what is it that we're looking for in those kinds of environments, right? And I think it's, we're just at such an incredibly exciting inflection point. It will be tough going for a while here. I mean, we all see the predictions around the economy, right? We all have seen the, the numbers around, unemployment claims, right? But there's no doubt in my mind that technology plays a critical, vital role in establishing what this new era is.
Okay, thank you. We're right up against running out of time. We've had a couple of people go ahead and jump. Amy, there's a couple of questions in there addressed to everyone that have to deal with 5G infrastructure, both in major cities and rural, that maybe you could take a moment and chat back with them about.
Okay.
So I appreciate, and again, thank you so much for joining us. This has been just fantastic. And I'm going to now ask everybody to join me in applauding, on mute, for Anne to be with us and for Amy to provide the introduction. Please remember to take this short survey. It really helps the programs team understand what you find valuable so that we can continue to program the rest of the year. And also, don't forget, nominations are still ongoing for the 20th Annual Tech Titans Awards Gala. The gala to October 23rd, so you have a little bit more time in getting those nominations out, but let's recognize those around us who are participating in North Texas. Information on the gala and all Tech Titan events are to be found at techtitans.org. Our next launch is on June 19th. It will feature the CTO of an Atlanta and Vietnamese-based company called KMS Technology. The CTO, Kashul Amen, will be our speaker. He will talk about what he and his team have learned in over 11 years of producing virtual and hybrid events, including how to network over Zoom and WebEx. We are currently planning this to be another virtual meeting and hope to make it a hybrid event contingent upon the reopening of Prestonwood Country Club. So I'd like to wish everyone a safe rest of your week. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you at another great program. Thank you all for participating, and we are now adjourned.
Thank you all. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Friday.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Friday.